Looking for real stories that lift you up? Welcome to Inspire and Impact, the podcast where purpose meets perseverance. This is where transformation begins and your story continues.
Welcome to the Inspire Impact podcast show. I'm your host, Daniel Rosenstein. Today I have the honor of interviewing David Deighton. David, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Well, thank you, Daniel. It's a pleasure to be here.
So you're a contemporary artist and you have a website called Triptych Dialogue. Can you maybe explain a little bit about what is it like you do and like how do you use contemporary art?
So I'm a lifetime artist and I do lots of different types of art, from your canvases to sculpture to ceramics, lots of different media. But right now, for the last decade, I'm working with ideas. And so that's a conceptual, I'm working as a conceptual artist and also experimental as I put out a question out there and I see what happens in return. And Triptych Dialogue is precisely about, this is going to sound strange, about asking questions to strangers, right? And their responses I use in artwork. And so I never know really what their answers are going to be, but the questions are always the same in hundreds and hundreds of exchanges. And that becomes the artwork. So it can be, some people might see it as performance art, but then there's a physical material representation of it as well that comes out in art installations and things of that nature. And I bring it to unusual places. And that, in a nutshell, is what Triptych Dialogue's about.
Really interesting. I mean, I'm curious to know, since you spent about 17 years owning and directing an art gallery, so what inspired you to move from exhibiting art, in the art gallery to creating participatory experiences where you're talking with, and creating these dialogues?
That's a good question. So it's like two different lives almost. The 17 years, I created this art gallery and it just grew and became very successful. And at its peak, I found that it wasn't fulfilling what I was looking for in my life. The money was coming in great. However, I was always fascinated about the political, social history behind the piece, because these were antiquarian art pieces going back 500 years all the way to the present. No reproductions. They were all artwork on paper. And there's a lot of stories behind them, but in the end, it became a resource for designers and decorators and businesses in order to decorate secondary, third, fourth homes for all these people and for businesses. And it lost, for me, the significance, the depth that was behind each piece, and also the depth in conversation with the people that were buying the pieces. Because we're very much in a consumer society, and I was really fulfilling that, and it wasn't fulfilling me. So I wanted to do something that had a greater impact or on my environment, and I guess a personal transformation, and that's what it's brought me. And so, hence, by asking a question and not expecting an answer, not knowing the answer, I could explore a lot of new domains, and that's been fascinating and really been driving me for the last 7 years. Yeah, does that make sense? Because it does to me.
No, it's very interesting. I mean, most people, especially I think artists in particular, are not interested in going deep. So, but everybody is unique in their own way, and I think it's kind of cool that you're expressing, your deep desire to go into the stories of these artwork, because from an artist's perspective, they probably spent a lot of time creating those pieces, and there probably is a story behind it that a lot of people don't know about, and they probably think, oh, this looks good on the wall here, but they don't realize, everything that's come about, especially if it's been around for hundreds of years. There'll probably be, an interesting conversation, to say the least. But I was curious to know is like, was there a particular conversation or experience? What made you realize that political polarization needed to become a focus of your art?
Right. So that's full of different stories in my life of how that got me there. Uh, I'm Franco-American. I was raised in France, and my father was American. And I would come to the United States on holidays, and there was different narratives taking place, especially during the Cold War, about the future of Europe or what the French were in the viewpoint of my father versus what my living experience back in France, and I could see this like discordance. It was like a double speak of sorts between like what's out east? Who are those communists out east? And so I went when I was 17. I went and spent my summer in communist Europe, going from one country to the other, hitchhiking, sleeping wherever, and experiencing what was on the other side of that Iron Curtain and the wall. And of course, the messaging was very different between the two. But what I realized is, with the conversations I was having with everyday people, were in the essence the same as what I was having in the West. However, the narrative was different. The storytelling of demonizing the other, the communists on one side and the capitalists on the other, pointing at the other as if they were enemies. And that was not my personal experience in my encounters. I wasn't encountering an enemy. I was encountering people with just everyday stories with the same emotions, just living a different narrative. So that I wanted to transpose and see how that exists in the society I live in here in the United States, and that needs just a multitude of questions, and so that brought me to go out in public and go to like a designated area, if you want, in a free speech area, and to ask people 3 non-confrontational questions on this taboo subject of politics and see where that would go. Where my expectation was people were going to get upset because, you're not supposed to talk about politics with strangers. That leads to confrontation. But once again, my surprise was there was no such thing. There wasn't a confrontation because I applied my curiosity into listening versus debating what they were saying, just actively listening to what they were saying. And I explored that in different ways, because apparently when you use active listening, you're supposed to use all your senses. So it wasn't just visual and auditory. How does this conversation smell like, or what's the tactile elements of this conversation, and the taste of it. That's a very odd place to go. So it becomes very abstract, and I would draw people into these conversations or these art installations that were surrounding these other senses, and we had even greater in-depth conversations with the people I would meet, and sometimes no conversation at all because it was too abstract for some people, and others that were curious about it would be drawn in, and we would have deeper and deeper conversations as things went along. And so at the beginning it was just testing, experimenting, and then it brought me to do different aspects of it, for example, to take those very same messages, put them inside of a ceramic vessel, right, that I would create, and then bury that out in the desert for no one probably to ever find. And that also is kind of a piece of art hidden forever, buried, maybe never to be discovered, probably never to be discovered. And what does that elicit? Does art have to be seen to exist, for example? Does it have to have an audience in order to be something? Am I the only audience, or is the nature and the environment that audience as well? And that brings to other things as well. So I find it a rich field of exploration with incredible encounters of new people, of a lot of different ideologies. May they be some people don't want to talk politics at all because it's against their religion. Well, we'll discuss that, and we'll learn more about that experience. Yeah, it's kind of an all-inclusive art project. But it doesn't take in the gallery and the exhibit. I want to bring it outside, or the gallery. It brings it outside of that environment where it's not meant to be. It's not supposed to be. It's unexpected. And that right there also creates what I find to be important in art, is a sense of discovery, curiosity, almost a shock in a sense, that brings you to think about its aesthetics, what it's about, where art should be, all those things. It puts all that into question. Yeah.
How did you go about choosing that name, Triptych Dialogue?
Yeah, so Triptych Dialogue, that's another story. I was with my daughter, we were traveling around Europe, and we were in London at the Victoria and Albert Museum. It deals with decorative arts. Fabulous museum. Maybe not, I'm about to say not in the top, the top museums, but to me it is. And it had a religious piece from the mid 1300s by von Berthold, a German artist that, and it's amazing that we even know his name, that painted 3 panels that are attached and hinged together, that fold, and that when they opens, it reveals, in this case, the story, the biblical story of the apocalypse. And it's okay, great. It has all this imagery and stuff on it, but half of it was missing, weathered with time. Right? Who knows? From wear, from water, from mold, all these things could have happened. But half of it was missing. And it was left in that state. I mean, it was restored for what was still there, but for what was missing, it wasn't completed later by the museum in order to fulfill the image, the part that was missing. And I found that to be very interesting, because that's what happens in our conversations. We only capture half of what's going on, and the other half is missing. And I wanted to explore that empty space. And that empty space is often found with questions. And so right there, I was kind of having an inner dialogue with what the meaning of the empty space was in these 3 wooden panels with missing imagery on them, a triptych. And then moved on from there. Well, actually, that's the point where, if you want, the word comes from, the word Triptych Dialogue. There's a lot of 3 elements in my work: the 3 non-confrontational political questions, the elements of me, the audience, and the environment in which the performance takes place or the artwork takes place. And I've even come to make my own triptychs, abstract paintings and collage, and with elements using old doors, because the word triptych comes also from the idea of doors that open up, not like doors of perception or anything like this, but revealing that as the door opens, you get to a more spiritual space. And so so I've been using actual doors to make triptychs, and inside they don't reveal religious imagery, but abstract paintings and relief sculptures within it, and they close and open. So I've kind of made full circle on that triptych, word right there, which is super hard. My website, Daniel, is Triptych Dialogue. I mean, who knows how to write triptych? Very few, right? It's got a Y in it, and the tick is at the end is a CH. I mean, it's probably not good for marketing, which is, but that's the origin of my project. And I thought it'd be a short-lived project, but it's like I feel it's just beginning, which is strange after 7 years. It just gets deeper and deeper with different facets. And the audience is becoming larger and larger with the interest of what this is about and where it leads, because it's quite novel to use this spoken word or conversation as an artistic form. I'm certainly not a conversation expert. It's actually more I'm interested in the silence in conversation and what's not actually kind of like in that triptych and the missing imagery. It's in the empty, what's not being seen or heard.
So you've documented more than 300 conversations across the United States. So what have those conversations taught you about Americans?
About Americans. So I kind of stopped counting. I gave myself a number. It was 324. Why not? But now we're way beyond those numbers. But and they're not just Americans, because they're often, I do this in national parks often, so there's a lot of visitors from abroad. And whoever participates or wants to participate, I don't know where they're from. But it's mostly taught me something about what we're willing and not willing to talk about. For example, I found, and these are generalizations, but people visiting from China don't want to answer any questions about politics whatsoever. And people from India are very happy to talk about politics. They're in a very polarized political climate right now, and are willing to answer my questions. And Americans from all different facets are, with the right presentation, are willing to answer the questions. If they understand that they're going to be heard and listened to and not interrupted, and that it's not a debate, that it's not meant to be confrontational, that I'm going just to ask them questions, listen, and on my part, not try to judge or feel triggered by whatever they're saying. And I give them an opportunity to be on stage for a little bit and to say what they have on their heart. And because they're questions, we often don't talk to, we're not supposed to talk about politics with strangers. Things could go wrong, and we want to avoid that. And I want to break that idea and give it just another approach that maybe people can replicate and take with them and try themselves, and hence be the artists themselves. Right.
I mean, have you ever interviewed somebody that had the exact opposite political beliefs as your own? And what did you learn from that? Or how did you deal with that? It must be tough, because, as you said, politics is very divisive, and being that you're talking to so many people, I'm sure you may have talked to people who have, very different beliefs of your own. So, how did you, did you get triggered? And if so, how did you deal with it? And what did you really learn with from people that have the opposite political beliefs as yourself?
Well, I can get so triggered. At the beginning, I think we were listening back to the first 100 conversations, and I can hear in those recordings some instances of me. I was triggered. Yeah, I was triggered. There were things that people said that I found offensive, against my beliefs, against my values, that surprised me, that I found to be false, misinformed, all these things. And I wanted to say something. But then I realized that this isn't about me. I wanted to just explore the space of giving people the opportunity to say what they had to say, not to judge. And that was transformational. That was a process, right? Because I often heard things and there were words, because I asked people, I tell them, say whatever you want. It doesn't matter what words you use, go for it. And yeah, there were a lot of slurs, racial slurs, not a lot, but of course I put a lot more weight on the incident than on the commonality. You know, the things you remember the walks that you go on when it heavily rained, or you fell or something happened. You remember those more than just the everyday walk that you go on. And it's the same with conversations. The ones that the outliers are the ones you remember most. And so I had to find a way for myself to be able to be there and to listen in, not just to record and then stop the recording at the end and move on. I wanted to be there during that conversation. So through experimentation, like for example, like what is so this is how it goes, Daniel. I asked 3 questions, and at the end, I asked people to give me one word that encapsulates all of their ideas. And that's kind of a dynamic word that often changes for them over time. And if that word encapsulates for me all the wording that they had earlier, which I may have found offensive, I wonder how that word would taste like, or that word would smell like. And that takes me to a different space where I kind of create my own disconnect of my own thought pattern in order to just get back to where I should be, which is listening in, not in agreement or not acquiescing to whatever they have to say, but just to give it everything I got, to listen in. And so I use my own personal disconnect, for example, of wondering what that word might smell like or taste like. And that works. And it works also for other people. I did a part of an art experiment where I'd ask people what the words would taste like. And that takes people immediately to a different space. That's very abstract, isn't it? What does democracy taste like? What's that? I mean, those things shouldn't even go together, but it's unexpected, but creates new thought of what. And also, there's a disconnect that allows you to stop thinking about what you were thinking about before and see things differently. And maybe the vocabulary is not as rich in our minds when it comes to taste and smell. We're very auditory and visual culture these days, and don't put as much weight on those other things as maybe we used to centuries ago. I don't know. I don't have many answers, but I have a lot of anecdotes. Yeah. So what do you think of what I'm saying? Where does that take you? I think originally we had a little conversation before this recording about art on the wall, landscapes, Rembrandts, and things like this that would be seen in a museum. Honestly, what does this sound like to you? And please be harsh if you need to on this type of art. How that resonates with you?
It's definitely different, because you said I'm more used to like the classical artists, or even like with modern art. I personally haven't seen like a lot of like political art, or even trying to get people to express themselves, to convey a point, or to bring about a change through the art. I know art can be very powerful, and it's interesting that there's so many different ways of using art for so many different things. So I think it's very interesting that you're choosing the subject of political divisiveness, because it seems to me, in my opinion and in my experiences, a lot of people just have their own opinions, and they're not willing to give it up or change, or sometimes they change over time, but after realizing certain things. But I mean, it leads me to my other question about is like, how does art help people like express themselves when it comes to political divisiveness, or do you find that art can be a good medium to use to heal this divisiveness, and it can help unify people to be more on the same page, or even not on the same page, at least respect each other a little bit more, even though they have the differences of opinion and they're not going to agree, but agree to disagree type of thing.
Yeah, I find it. I find art can be a catalyst for breaking down all the elements of our thought and restructuring them in a new way and expanding from there and getting more expansive, right? If, for example, to fight political polarization, you can follow what the European Union has a special agency that deals with political polarization. The State Department has their own under, I don't know if it still exists, it's called CISA, CISA. And in there, they describe ways to how to be better informed, to see, to be able to discern what disinformation is versus misinformation, how to have conversations. It's like a college course. Every time, it's so complicated. It's not, I mean, it makes sense, but it takes a lot of time and effort. And for every statement that's out there, either in the media or that we hear from other people, we're not going to put the time in to go verify each one of those things. So I was looking more like, what's the framework in the missing area? Like in the missing image of the triptych, the untold story. And often that untold story is inside of us, and we just need a way to get to that. And art is the vehicle that can often get us into a place of areas we haven't thought about, or we haven't felt, we haven't expressed, that maybe we weren't aware of, but we had an inkling of, that may open up our horizons. And often maybe art might seem entirely ridiculous to us as well, because we don't see the necessity of exploring whatever the artist is putting forth, and that's fine too. That shows something about what we're preoccupied with and what we want to deal with. So the unknown is a rich area of exploration, and it's and to me, I find it to be a vehicle that can bring us quickly to areas of personal exploration, and can change maybe our perception of how we view, in my case, how we view having a political conversation with a stranger and not getting in an argument, how to do it non-confrontationally. And I offer people an example so that they can take that and use that in their own lives, and maybe create bridges with people that maybe even family members they no longer speak to, because they're of two different political views, and they just say, well, let's not talk about this. I'd rather have a very open and free society that can discuss all things in a civil manner without getting triggered. And in order to get to that space, I had to be triggered hundreds of times to find out about myself, like, how am I going to deal with this, right? Because I certainly got triggered many, many times. And I still do, but less so, because I guess from the practice of having conversations, and also recognizing what a trigger is for me. And art offers that. Like, what is it in that piece of artwork that I like, or that transports me, or that I find offensive, or all those things? Being able to pinpoint that is something we can add to our own viewpoint of the world, and it's ever changing and evolving, right? It's kind of a view like, what is our view? What's our point of view? What's that about? Does it change? Is it something that's static or dynamic? Do we live in echo chambers? What's an echo chamber? Do you have an echo chamber? Do I have one? What's that intersection look like of the two? And those are all areas of the empty the empty imagery on that triptych from the Victorian Albert Museum for me, right? The unknown, and that unknown questions, sometimes answers, and it brings you forth. And people have been telling me that this was a lot more effective in their lives than having to research every single piece of information that's put forth to them, especially as there's a deluge of information that we get through our devices, and we can't have time to sort it through, understand it, make sense of it. But human relations it's kind of in our code, right? When we're face to face with someone, those exchanges, and they're deep. They create like a story that we have. We remember those a lot more than some factual piece out of our news feed. And if we can focus not on the elements of facts and opinion that they said, but rather than on the human experience, the emotional level of that experience, then there's connection there. It's a beginning.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's actually very interesting to do all this, and I'm surprised I haven't seen any major political party or person, at least here in the United States, that actually uses art to their advantage. Because to your point, art can be really powerful. It express emotions that that maybe like a news article wouldn't convey as much.
Yeah, I think also, politics these days are very much run on outrage and division. So something that kind of brings people together would not be what they're looking for. However, there's art used all the time. Maybe it's AI generated these days for memes and videos and all that, in order to, in a sense, persuade. But also, it has this shock value in it. It has the outrage in it, and then it has a message in order to gear you in one specific area, and it has also this storytelling often, right? That because we're still very much storytelling people, and we love the story, we love the narrative. That's the stuff we remember, and they're certainly building that on either side to create their own vision of what the country should be like. And where does that leave us as individuals, right? It is very much an us versus them mentality. I find that we can have the conversations without agreement, even with the people that are completely on the other side of us. And it allows me also to show that if we have this, if I totally disagree with somebody on something, at the end of the conversation, I'll tell them that I am that enemy that they've been talking about, just so that they can see what the face of the enemy looks like. And it often ends with, well, you're not like them. I think that's a win. I'm not them. I'm not the other. I'm not the enemy. It gives a human face. And I think that has a lot of power. I think there's a lot of political power in each one of us in the face-to-face encounters that we could have. And we should go out and vote, of course, but this is something that we could all take. It's not one of persuasion, but it's one of exposure, of showing the piece of art, if you like, without having to read what it's about. Right.
Can you maybe share a conversation you had in the past that kind of surprised you or transformed you personally?
Wow. Yeah, so there's okay, I'll just take one. Let's see. Oh, well, often I'm surprised by the Mennonites, the Amish. They come to national parks. They don't want to talk about politics, but in the end, politics is a very big part of their life, in the sense that they don't want to have politics. They don't want to talk about politics because it's the elements of the mundane, of the world. It's not a religious experience. But then they have so much to say on the subject about why they shouldn't talk about politics. One of the questions is how would you describe the political system of the United States of America? And and their answer to that is often that they're not part of the political system. But in the end, after hearing them, I hear that they are very much part of the system, right? They just decided not to interact with it the way other people want to interact with it. That they made certain decisions, so they think they're dissociated with it, yet in a sense they're still part of it. And that to me, when I get those conversations, makes me realize, well, I can't escape it either, right? I'm very much, regardless of how much I want to distance myself from, whatever people are saying in their answers, or distance myself from the facts and opinions, just my rejection of agreeing or disagreeing with whatever they're saying makes me part of it as well. So just in a different manner, just our way of navigating our relationships. And so those are good. I have people sometimes, and this happens, I get people that cry. Because nobody's ever asked them the questions. Like, they've been hearing political stuff all the time and they feel bombarded. And now finally somebody's listening to them. That's weird when the stranger in front of you starts to cry. Like, you want to console them or whatever. And there's obviously something there. There's some form of trauma. I triggered something by asking the questions and giving the space for them to answer. That was a trigger to bring them into a space of, I guess, some form of release, but it's expressed with tears. That's odd to me. And that often happens, Daniel, after the recording. Like, I record the 3 questions in the Word, and then I turn off my device, and then conversations often continue. And then there's actually, that area is a lot more rich than the 3 questions themselves. It takes you to a space where you can then really get into things very quickly with someone, where they really open up, because it's a thing magical talking to a stranger. You seem to be able to say things that you wouldn't say maybe to a friend, because you're never going to see that person again, maybe. Right? There's some form of comfort of the release. But there's never been a confrontation. The only time, there was one time I wasn't pleased. I heard this conversation a few weeks ago, when I was listening to these earlier recordings, and I wasn't pleased with what the person said. It was too short. They used one word to answer, and I wanted to egg them on, like, tell me more. And so I added another question in there, which, tell me more. But that wasn't part of my format. And right there, the person was, got upset. It's like, you didn't say, you said you'll just answer the questions. You didn't say we're going to go ask me for more. That's my answer. And they were upset of the way I interjected, and I wanted more development on it, like I was pushing. And so from that moment on, I was like, no, don't push. Just let people say what they have to say, and that's it. This is not a debate. This is just giving people the space to say what they need to say. And if it resonates and it with them, they might do the same with others, and make the artwork even bigger, right? And some other people think it's scientific. It's like, well, what's the, what are the results of your research? And I was like, well, it's not scientific, because I try to make it as random as possible, but nonetheless, I'm still kind of interacting with chosen people, and I do have a tendency to maybe if I see somebody that has a baseball cap that says something that's different than my point of view, I want to talk to them more than I want to talk to somebody that has a messaging that I agree with, because I'm looking for maybe to be triggered, and to explore that personally. So it's that's my own journey. So it doesn't stick to just anyone. I found myself, after hundreds and hundreds of conversations, I want something else, and so I'm kind of breaking away from my original my original vision, if you want.
So, I mean, now that you've had this experience of talking to people with very polarized views about politics, what advice can you give to people who have family members or close friends or coworkers that have very different political perspectives? What advice can you give to them?
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, and this is just from experimentation. My thoughts are, I think I'd start with strangers. Practicing asking questions to strangers, because there's no skin in the game, much. And that allows you to practice in order to then try it with somebody that's close to you or used to be close to you, and you want to get back into it with them, and to listen, of course. Let them say what they have to say, and not in your mind start thinking about, oh, well, they said this, so I'm going to tell them this later, and rectify their point of view. If they ask you a question, then that's your chance to answer. But if they don't ask you any questions, can you really let it go, right? And just give them the space, because then it's an interpersonal relationship, right? You don't have to worry too much about them broadcasting their views to a wider audience. It's just the two of you. It's a dialogue. And if a question comes your way, then that's your opportunity to answer. But if no questions come your way, then that's it. And that's hard. We will get our 2 cents in too, right? So yeah, my advice is have the conversations with strangers. Don't shy away later with the conversations with people that are close by. Try these non-confrontational questions. They're not even of my invention. My questions were polarizing. I had some friends that were linguists, and as well as professors in communication that helped me make questions that were as non-confrontational as possible. And the questions are, how would you describe the political system of the United States of America? The second one, describe your feelings or reactions to the current state of U.S. politics. And for people of different countries, they can change U.S. politics to politics in India or whatever, right? And then the third one is kind of a game where you finish the sentence. Politics in the United States, blank, and then the person finishes that sentence. And then at the end, you can always ask, one word that kind of brings it all together, and respect the silence in it, right? I had a hard time with that, Daniel, in the recordings at the beginning. I couldn't stand the long silences because people were thinking, and it took them a while to find that word. And I was recording. I was like, oh, I'm going to have these 10 seconds of silence, and I'm not going to edit them out. It's going to be a weird recording. So I was like, oh, you said outrage, you said dissidence, you said this. Those are some words, and I would help them along the way, and found that later that that's not the way to go. Just let it be. Take the time, and people will have the opportunity to say what they have to say when the time comes. And then that word changes with time as well. If I see them hours later, often people will tell me, you know what, that word's not dissidence anymore. It's hope or something. It's a dynamic word. And I find that very interesting because there's a process going on there, right? Our thoughts take us to new places. An invitation to talk to strangers. Don't talk to strangers, we tell the kids. I'm saying talk to strangers, but it's about the environment, Don't talk to the stranger in the van at the crossroad. You can talk to the stranger when your parents maybe are nearby and there's somebody else on the bench. That's okay. Have let kids use their curiosity to discover and ask questions. See what that takes them.
So Are you currently, I'm just curious to know also, are you, because you spent so much time doing this, are you now or maybe in the future interested in training other artists or even non-artists about how to do this artwork and because it seems like you kind of develop a method or process of doing all this to, there's a method and process of asking the right questions, being a very good listener, how to deal with people. I think a lot of people can find a lot of value in that. So have you
Mm.
thought about maybe like creating a course, or maybe you're doing it now that I'm not aware of? Are you like, do you think about creating a course or program or something, or even like a workshop that people can come, learn all the things that you're doing? Because it seems like it's really valuable to gain like these like good communication skills, especially like you said, we live in such a divisive world now.
Um, so not directly in a sense. I do bring artists together to show them how they can use First Amendment free speech areas on America's public lands, and how they can bring their art there, where political speech, religious speech is used, art speech is protected by the First Amendment. I I share how that process can take place, how to get the forms, what to do. Um, However, in a replication of what I'm doing, I think it's a personal experience. So somebody that feels like I can try what David's talking about in their own lives, like what we're talking about right now. So one of your listeners will be like, I'm going to try this out. That right there. I guess that's what we're doing right now. I'm exploring this year what it is to be a guest on podcasts, right? It's this space between the being online, we're in front of a screen, yet we're having a conversation. You're asking questions, I'm answering, and I'm exploring what that looks like. So I'm still very much interested in the exploration aspect of it, and versus the one of sharing any findings that I have, because none of it are definitive. However, the personal experience that people have of talking to other people and to strangers, it's a very personal one. So, I encourage people to go out there and give it a try. I mean, it has to include a lot of listening and not to interject, to be present and to listen in. And it's a beautiful space, and a lot of connections happen. Also friendships happen. People that just met like that. Um, so yes and no. Yes and no. Yeah, what we're doing right now is kind of I'm sharing my experience. Take it or leave it. And curiosity takes you somewhere new, right? Yeah. I mean, you decided to have me on, right? That sense of curiosity. We're having a conversation. We're sharing with others as well. That's from the sense of your curiosity as well, to have me on. So I think that's what we're doing. Yeah, it's a different type of exchange. No courses or lecture. If somebody else wants to, please contact me, and I'll be glad to collaborate. I'll consider it as an art collaboration.
I'm curious to know, because like you said that you always start the conversation talking about politics, but do people ever like try to, like you said, some people don't want to talk about politics, but they may like, do they ever start talking about other types of art? Like, it's like classical art, like, oh, look, what do we think about Van Gogh or something, and it's not really political at all. Does that ever happen?
Oh man, I think people are just kind of so. First of all, they don't even know it's a work of art. It's kind of just me, and when I have an art installation there, they're wondering what the heck is this, and it's not in a gallery. It's not where it's supposed to be. So the association is not, a lot of people don't make that association, and that's okay. So our conversation, I think people are very curious to the idea that they could be questions, political questions that are non-confrontational, because these days, in most people's minds, a question would elicit some form of confrontation. And is there a trap or something like this? Am I setting a trap? And so there is an explanation of what this is about, but it only takes a few seconds, and people jump in. So how do you replicate that in your own life? That is a thing, right? They're not everybody's going to take an art installation to go in a public space in order to share this. But the story of the exchange, that's something that we can all take with us. Like the conversation the story of what we share today, That's a story that we can take with us and share with someone else. And that starts as the beginning of a conversation about, yeah, of course you can have a political conversation without confrontation. And people are curious to know how that is. It's all about listening, being in there, and letting the other person say what they have to say until it's your turn by another question, their question to answer, if there is a question. And yeah, so that takes place. But we don't go deeper into about art. Those are after talking about politics. They ask me some questions, then yeah, then we'll get into it. And a lot of people, they're still busy. They got stuff to do. They don't have an hour to go sit down and talk with me. So they often go to my website and see what other artwork I'm doing, or listen to the conversations on. I used to send them out to YouTube so they could listen to hundreds of conversations of other people. Before that, they'd go, I'd send them to Instagram to see this 1-year experiment I did on Instagram about my experience with political polarization and disinformation, and how I got banned on the platform for trying to reach out outside of my bubble echo chamber. And so they go to kind of get a view using our devices in order to see a little bit about what other things I've been doing. Because not everybody can go straight to see me at an art installation in a national park, for example. That only happens a few days, then it's gone. It doesn't stay there, it's intemporal. So there's the people that see that are just people usually that just happen to walk by, right? That offers for the randomness of it, which I like, right? Yeah, the classes. I don't know if I'm ready for classes. But somebody contact me. Yeah, sure. I'm ready. We'll do it with somebody. We'll collaborate.
So, being that political division seems to be so deeply entrenched these days, what gives you hope that people can rebuild trust and social connection from your experiences talking to all these people?
Well, yeah, not everybody's going to put all the time and effort I'm putting into this. And I get that, yeah, having hope, it's hard in a time of, us being in front of our devices all the time, the use of AI, wherever that's going to take us. I'm exploring that as well. This is what but this is my personal experience. I'm trying to balance the face-to-face time, if you want, experience more than time, the face-to-face experience with the online experience. So I know I'm going to spend maybe more time online or in front of a screen during the day, working, consuming whatever's out there. So the face-to-face time, I want that to be meaningful and have a lot of depth in it, right? And this might be a hangover from my time as in the art gallery, right? I wanted the depth and connection in that, and I wasn't getting it. However, in these conversations, I do get, although it's fleeting and it doesn't last long, a sense of depth and connection with the other, and that has a lot of weight. So in my experience, trying to have more time to do that type of experience face to face, to give more weight in my consumption of experience, if you want, the one that includes all of our senses, the one where we feel slightly uncomfortable, where we don't have the protection from being behind a screen, or the anonymity of being on the screen, and not just consuming whatever is given to us by the algorithm, but of making the choices to speak to someone. And that always has a good story. It might not have all the outrage and all the lights and the music to go with it, but if you're attentive, it does. There's the musicality of silence. There's the micro. There's all the different expressions from the other person. There's the new thoughts and where it takes you. There's looking into someone's eye and for just that extra second. There's the sharing of meaning. There's a lot of human experience in there, and that right there is worth it all. I think we're missing a lot of that in our lives, and people have been sharing that with me as well. That might be why some people are crying, because it's missing in our lives. We can't quite pinpoint it. It's the untold story of the triptych that we haven't quite defined. But by experiencing it, we recognize ourselves in there.
So you said that one of the things that you've been doing was developing your own listening, skills and stuff. Yeah. So what is like one practical listening, either skill or technique that you can share with our audience today that they can try this week that can maybe challenge them a little bit and becoming a better listener?
Yeah. Okay. So I'll go back to the one that works best for me is the way things taste or smell. So if there's one word or a sentence or something that upsets you in what somebody else is saying, rather than just reacting to it, just think of what that tastes like, right? And that will immediately, it's so abstract, it'll take you to another space and you'll get right back in there with the person. That really helps for listening. You don't want to miss half the story. You want to hear the whole story. And to do that, you need to be listening, right? Not to what's going on in your own mind, but what's coming to you. So try to think of what that tastes like or smell like, and whatever it is, apple pie, shit pie, whatever it is. Take that, let it go, get back in there. And it's uncomfortable maybe, but the rewards are often worth the pain. It takes practice too. So everybody wants to talk about themselves, so it's easy to ask the questions, but it's harder to listen.
Well, David, I wanted to thank you so much for coming on the show today. It was very interesting and definitely made me become a little bit, it definitely challenged me being a listener because this is definitely an unusual conversation that I don't typically have with people. And so it's definitely thought-provoking, which I like. That's why I invited you on the show. Is there anything, last-minute things you'd like to share with our audience before we sign off for the day?
Oh, they feel free to contact me. That collaborative idea, why not? Also check out the website. You can see all the different things I'm doing around that, my different expressions, and you'll have your own. So keep the dialogues going. Go out there, kind of test the limits, see where that takes you.
Is the best way to contact you through your website?
Yes. Yeah, the best way would be to go to Triptych Dialogue. And since it's such a hard word, let's spell it out. It's TRIPTYCH, and then dialogue, DIALOGUE, altogether.com. And on there's a contact. And you can go read stuff on the blog, see the different artistic expressions. There'll be links back to the conversations. You can even hear what other people said. And I look forward to hearing from whoever was out there. And I